Hey guys, welcome back to another tutorial from ADSR and Sylenth1.com. If you're not subscribed to the YouTube channel and you want to do that, you can at youtube.com/ADSRtuts. That was a quick demo of the sound we'll be making today in Sylenth. It's kind of like a huge epic anthemic type lead for EDM, trance, things like that. So I do have some third-party processing on it. I have an instance of the LFO tool doing some sidechain compression, and I have bussed some reverb to an aux send to add some more ambience to it, but nothing that you can't really achieve in any DAW or by using like a ghost track and a ghost kick and all that to get that sidechain compression. So I have a new instance of Sylenth pulled up right here. Alright, so first thing we're going to do is the polyphony. We need to turn up to 6 because I was playing chords and I want, sometimes I have more than 3 notes going. So all right, and just real quick, because I want to iterate this point, it's really important to set your filters to A and B and B and A. If you don't set it up like that, the sound's it's gonna be really small. It's not gonna be big. So in part A, what we're going to do is we're gonna pitch this down to -1, and then we're also gonna use this fine pitch down to -0.5. For the waveform, we're going to select a Q pulse. And the volume you can keep at 10. And the phase, we're going to do 90.86 degrees. So the sound will be like this. Uncheck retrig so the sound's not as consistent every time the note's played. And crank the voices up to 8. And we're going to introduce some Detune, 1.05 worth. All right, and that pretty much covers the parameters of Oscillator A1. Let's go on to Oscillator A2 here, and you can keep the pitches where they are, but we are going to pitch up the fine pitch to 0.10, and what that's doing is just adding even more detune to it. The volume, keep at 10. The phase, we're going to do 90.86. We're actually going to do those on, we're going to use that value on all the phases in for all 4 oscillators. So 90.86 is the magic number. And the detune, we're going to detune this one to 3.10. And voices, we're going to do 8 again, and make sure you uncheck retrig. All right, and now we need to get the right waveform, which we're going to select the Q pulse, the H pulse. All right, now let's get the amp envelope settings dialed in. So the decay, we're going to bump this to about 4.43. And I'm going to take the sustain down to 0, and I'm going to nudge the release up to about 2.62 or 82, whichever value it gives me. All right, and now let's set up the filter type for our part A. We're going to use the low pass filter, and for the cutoff frequency, we are going to select 887. So turn it up to about 887.41. And the resonance you can keep at 0, and the drive you can keep at 0. And then tick this to 12 dB. Alright, now for part B. In part B, for B1, the oscillator, we're going to pitch this down to, -1, and the waveform, we're going to keep it on saw. We're going to uncheck retrig, and we're going to do the fine edit here with this value down to -0.10. Alright, you can keep the volume at 10, and you can keep the phase, let's turn the phase up to 90.86. I'm just going to do that on the other one because it's the same value for all 4 oscillators. And voices, we're going to do 8. All right, 2.57 for the detune on oscillator B1. All right, and that's it for oscillator B1. In B2, we're going to pitch that up to +1. And on the fine, we're not going to do any of the fine tuning for that tuning. And we're going to select a saw wave again. And voices, 8, and uncheck retrig. And volume you can keep at 10. Phase you can actually keep at 0 for this one. And so I was wrong. When I said earlier that we're going to use 90.86 for the phase for all 4, we're going to do it for only 3 oscillators, A1, A2, and B1. And for Detune, let's turn that up to 5.81 to really spread out the sound. All right, and if you get to this point and it's not sounding anything like it, make sure you've already kind of set up your filter types to do B and A and B. Otherwise, it will not sound remotely close. And for the filter type for part B, we're going to do a high-pass filter for this, actually. And we're going to turn the filter, the cutoff amount to 19.91. All right, so now that we got that out of the way, we need to do some settings in the AMP envelope for B, and we're going to select 5 for the decay. And actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to bounce back to part A. I'm going to hit copy because the parameters aren't exactly the same, but they're close, so then I'm moving less. So we're going to now just nudge part B's envelopes to 5, and the sustain we're going to turn up to just 2.41. It was at 0 from the oscillator, or part A's envelopes. And the release for B will be 4.43. Or if you can't get there, sometimes Sylenth will, let's try this, we'll do 4.41 then. And that's what's kind of making it have that anthemic sound now, as the releases are ringing out almost like a reverb effect. Okay, so now that we got the filters and envelopes kind of set up, let's go down to our filter control, our master filter control, and make sure that your hertz is at 146.16. Key tracking is keep where it is, resonance keep where it's at, unless you want to boost those. But turn the warm drive on. All right, now let's go to the effects. The first effect that we're going to turn on is the distortion. Keep it on overdrive. Turn the amount down. I had it at about 2, I believe. 2.43, let's go there. I think I had a dry wet almost at 10. I think I actually had it at 10. All right, and then I also activated some EQ on this sound. And you're going to toggle this to 1 pole to 1 pole to 2 pole. All you do is click on that box. And the bass value, let's turn that down to 5.43 dB. And the bass frequency, let's turn that down to 52.86 hertz. All right, and the treble, we're going to turn down to -2 dB. Or, I'm sorry, just down to 2 dB, not to -2. I'm going to turn the frequency down to about 2021 hertz. All right, and now let's go on to the delay. I just turned on a delay here. Doesn't really matter. It wasn't super important to the sound to me, but I'm going to turn the volume. I'm going to turn the level down to 1/8 on both of them. And then low cut to about 15 hertz, around there. High cut to about 830 or 8,836. I'm going to uncheck ping pong, and smear I'm going to crank up. Spread I'm going to boost to about 58%. So it starts at about 50%. So boost it to about 58. I'm going to turn the feedback down to about 24%. Now let's crank the width to 100 to really, really boost the sound's stereo field. And dry wet, I'm going to have at about 33%. So let's turn it up just a little. All right, in the reverb module, I'm going to select for the size. I'm going to select 2 because I had a third-party plugin doing most of the reverb, so I had this pretty minimal. Pre-delay, you can keep where it's at. Width, keep where it's at. Damp, turn it up to about 5. And dry and wet, you can keep just a little bit below 50%. Okay, and finally the compression, because the sound had a lot of snap to it, and that's how I achieved that in Sylenth. So for the ratio, I boosted it to about 5.64, I believe, or around there, or 5.5. Let's see, 5.5. Or I guess 5.64 will have to work. And for the threshold, I did negative 18 dB. I kept the release and the attack and the release points how they were. So that is the bulk of the sound. Only thing we have to do is the modulation envelope. So what I'm going to do in modulation envelope 1, I'm going to select cutoff A, and I'm going to turn this rotary knob to 2.19. And then I'm going to take cutoff B in this box, and I'm going to pitch this, or I'm going to turn this knob up rather to 4.29. And then I'm going to turn the attack up on this to 3.22. These are important settings if you're trying to recreate the sound that you heard in the beginning, pretty like almost to get it exact. We're going to do that at 3.22, and then we're going to crank the decay, the sustain, the release to 10 on these. So just jack those up. And that's why I turned them so low on the actual amp envelopes for part A and for part B, because I knew I was going to rather have the sound be more influenced by a parameter like cutoff or pitch or something like that. Okay, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do pitch A and B. And I'm going to turn this up to 5.52 or around there. We're just using this to add some attack to some snap to the attack of the note. And I'm going to turn the decay up to 0.4, I think 4.6. All right, and that will pretty much do it for the modulation envelopes. Now I'm going to assign a mod wheel, and I'm going to do some cutoff here. So cutoff A, I'm going to do cutoff B, and I'm going to pitch the. I'm going to turn the source knob down to about -5, and I'm going to turn this one up to about 10. And then you can switch between the two cutoff points. So it sounds kind of funky right now, but here's what we got for part A. And part B. So I need to turn part B down in the mix. I'm going to turn the distortion down a little bit now that we have the cutoff set up in the modulation envelope. And that is pretty much the sound, guys. Some things to take away from this tutorial that you can apply to your other sounds would be when you're using both part A and part B, and you're using most of the oscillators in Sylenth, doing the AB and the BA will really, really affect the sound. I can show you what I meant by that earlier real quick. So if I solo the sound, and I solo part A, you'll notice that there wasn't any change in the sound. But yet, that's playing. It's because both are being routed back into the filters, so it really makes it sound thicker and bigger when you kind of play with. So it makes it sound a lot thicker and bigger when you kind of interplay between part A and part B going into the filter, and you give them different filter types. I did low pass and high pass, so kind of the part B is adding a lot of the high end sound to it, whereas part A is the meat, but yet both are going into the filters. So if you have any questions or comments, let me know below, and I'll try to get back to them as soon as I can. If you haven't checked out Sylenth1.com, head on over there. There's tons of tutorials, Sylenth presets, everything Sylenth. And as always, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.